Picture this. It's 6 a.m., and you are standing in this quiet, sprawling field just outside Pune, India.
Yeah, the sun is barely even up yet.
Right, but the air is already getting, heavy and thick with that intense humidity. And right beside you is this massive piece of agricultural machinery. It's a customer's SP2800 planter.
And it is just completely dead in the dirt.
Exactly, dead. The display is flashing some hydraulic anomaly code that you have literally never seen before in your life.
Oh man, and out in this specific field, you are entirely cut off, right? There's zero cellular connection, no internet.
Nothing, total dead zone.
And the nearest service depot is what, like 90 kilometers away?
Yeah, at least. To make matters even worse, the customer who actually owns that broken machine is standing right over your shoulder.
Losing money by the minute.
Losing money and rapidly losing patience. Now, I want you to imagine you are Ranjit, the field technician in this exact scenario.
Talk about a high-pressure morning.
Seriously. And to do your job right now, to just survive this morning, you need 3 really specific answers. First, what does the service level agreement, the SLA, actually require you to do here? Like, what is the response time window, and what kind of financial penalty is the company looking at if this isn't fixed today?
Right, the financial exposure.
Second, has anyone in the firm ever seen this exact fault pattern before? And, what actually fixed it?
You need that history.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And third, given the specific hardware sitting right in front of you, what is your exact next step?
It's an incredibly high-stakes moment for Ranjit. And here is where this rather stunning paradox becomes visible.
Yeah, this is the crazy part.
Because Ranjit works for Feldmann AgroTech. This is a 147 million euro firm. They possess a massive, state-of-the-art enterprise data platform.
$1 billion infrastructure, basically.
Right. We are talking about a system that captures every single transaction, every IoT sensor reading from every tractor, every financial record generated for years.
But when Ranjit asks those 3 critical questions out in the field, that billion-dollar platform is completely silent.
Total data silence.
And to figure out why that happens, and, well, how to fix it, welcome to today's deep dive. We have been poring over a fascinating white paper and a documentary film detailing the inner life of this exact company.
Yeah, and we aren't just going to talk about a software stack today. We are really looking into the actual consciousness of a modern corporation.
Right, because the fundamental question Ranjit's situation forces us to ask is this: why does a firm with a pristine, perfectly functioning data platform still not, know what to tell its own technician in the exact moment he needs it most?
It's a profound failure of the system.
It reminds me of, imagine having a brilliant savant in the room, someone who has perfectly memorized a massive library of encyclopedias.
Like word-for-word recall.
Exactly. Perfect recall of every single fact ever written down. But if you ask them what they had for breakfast or why they just walked into the room, they just look at you blankly.
They have all the data, but absolutely zero self-awareness.
Precisely. And if we look at the actual architecture of Feldmann's data platform, we can see exactly why that amnesia exists.
Yeah, the sources outline how they achieved what data engineers call phase 2 of data evolution. It's known as a medallion architecture.
The bronze, silver, and gold layers, right?
Right, and to break that down, for someone who might not, build data lakes for a living, think of it as a massive automated filtration system.
Okay, filtration for what exactly?
For the operational exhaust of the company. The bronze layer ingests raw, unfiltered data exactly as it happens. Just a jumble of text files and raw sensor pings.
Sounds messy.
It is. So the silver layer cleans that data, matching up timestamps and removing errors. Then the gold layer aggregates it into neat business-level metrics for the executives.
Okay, I see. So when an invoice is paid, or an IoT sensor flags pressure drop, or a dealer logs a call, that operational exhaust is perfectly captured and organized.
Yes, but the key word there is exhaust.
Because it's just a trail of things that have already happened.
Exactly. And that operational exhaust reveals a really deep structural flaw in how we think about businesses. The sources actually trace this flaw all the way back to Ronald Coase.
The Nobel Prize-winning economist.
Right. Coase spent a lot of time thinking about why firms even exist in the first place. Like, if the open free market is so efficient, why do we build these massive walled-off corporations?
Instead of just using independent contractors for every single task, you mean?
Exactly. Why not just hire freelancers for everything every day?
Well, because navigating the open market for every tiny thing is just exhausting. And expensive. If I need a graphic designer every day, it is way easier to just hire one and bring them inside my company.
Rather than negotiating a brand new contract on the open market every single morning.
Right, that would be a nightmare.
So Coase defined a firm as a nexus of contracts. A company is not defined by its office buildings or its logo. It is defined entirely by its boundaries.
Its boundaries, okay.
Yeah, by the agreements it makes to internalize certain responsibilities and its commitments to the outside world.
Oh, wow. Which means the fatal flaw in Feldman's billion-dollar data lake is that it has literally no idea where its own boundaries are.
None at all.
The platform knows every piece of exhaust generated inside the boundary, but no one ever told the platform what the firm actually promised the outside world.
Exactly. It doesn't know what Feldman has agreed to. The formal commitments, like the SLA obligations, the dealer agreements, the strategic targets, they were never fed into that medallion architecture.
They just exist as PDFs sitting on some server in the legal department, or locked in an executive spreadsheet.
Right. Because the platform only sees the exhaustive daily operations, it doesn't know where the firm ends or what it is legally and strategically responsible for.
Wait, hold on. Let me push back on this for a second, because that just sounds like a ridiculously simple data engineering oversight.
It does seem obvious at first glance.
Right. If the problem is just that the SLAs are locked in PDFs in the legal department, why not just scan all those PDFs and dump the text files into the bronze layer?
Just toss them in the lake.
Yeah. Ranjit needs to know the SLA is now in the data lake. Problem solved.
Right. Well, no. Because simply dumping the text of a contract into a data lake doesn't mean the machine actually knows how to use it. Reading a string of text is not the same thing as understanding a rule.
Oh, I see what you're saying.
And this is where the economic theory crashes right into computer science. There is a principle formulated back in 1979 by the computer scientist Robert Kowalski.
Kowalski's equation, right?
Yes. He wrote down an equation that serves as the foundation for how we evaluate logic systems. Algorithm equals logic plus control.
Logic plus control. Okay, so if Kowalski says an algorithm requires both, and Feldman's medallion architecture is just capturing operational exhaust,
then they have essentially built a massive logic engine with absolutely zero control.
Wow.
The medallion architecture is purely the logic layer. It's a massive passive record of facts. A sensor reading dropped, an invoice was sent, but it completely lacks the control layer.
And what exactly does the control layer do?
Control represents the strategic intent. It is the reactive rules, the goals, and the specific contractual clauses that give the logic its actual meaning.
Okay, I think I get it. So having just the logic layer is really just like keeping a meticulous tally of every single time a basketball bounces on a hardwood court.
Oh, that's a great analogy.
Yeah, so you have this massive, perfectly cleaned database of bounces. But you have absolutely no idea what the rules of basketball are, what a foul is, or, who is currently winning.
Exactly. You just have the bounces. So to the Feldman data platform, that hydraulic anomaly on Ranjit's tractor isn't an emergency. It's not a signal.
It's just another bouncing line on a graph.
Right, because there is no SLA rulebook in the system to actually test it against. Without that control layer, the system is merely watching events happen. It isn't reasoning about them.
So how do they fix that? How do they add the rulebook?
Well, Feldman's leadership makes a very deliberate choice to enter what the sources call Phase 3. They decide to build that control layer explicitly.
What does that actually look like technically?
They add 6 specific delta tables to the platform. Not more exhaust, but the firm's actual commitments, the dealer agreements, the service SLAs, and the strategic objectives.
And what makes a delta table different from just, uploading that PDF or tossing a spreadsheet into the mix? Why does the format matter?
Because a delta table isn't just a static document. It's a dynamic, living structure that supports ACD transactions.
Which means it's reliable and verifiable, like a real database.
Exactly. It allows the data platform to read those commitments, not as raw text, but as actionable rules. They are finally handing the system the rulebook.
And the sources measure the impact of this shift, right? Using something called the Narrative Effectiveness Score, or NES.
Yes, the NES. It's a fascinating metric that tracks how much of the firm's actual strategic intent is traceable through its data.
And before Phase 3, that score sat at negative 12%. Basically, the platform and the firm were operating on completely different definitions of reality.
But once they build that control layer with those 6 tables, that score jumps up to 35%. The platform fundamentally elevates. It stops being just a passive record keeper and becomes a collaborator.
Which means Ranjit's first question finally gets an answer.
Yes.
As he stands in that dirt in Pune, the platform now knows the company's boundary. It reads the specific SLA for that customer. It knows it requires a 4-hour response window.
And it automatically calculates the exact penalty exposure if they miss that window. The silence is breaking. Ranjit now knows the rules of the game he's playing.
But he still doesn't know how to fix the broken planter.
Right, the rules only get you so far.
Exactly. Knowing the financial penalty of an SLA doesn't tell you which wrench to pick up or which valve to turn. The rulebook isn't enough.
No, it's not.
So if a static rulebook isn't enough, are you saying the platform needs to somehow learn from the messy, real-world mistakes Ranjit makes in the field?
It requires moving from formal, theoretical rules to actual lived experience.
Yeah?
And to understand how a machine does that, the sources look at biological systems.
Like Karl Friston's work.
Exactly. The neuroscientist Karl Friston developed the theory called active inference. He argues that any living organism, or in our case, a healthy organization, must constantly calibrate its internal model against reality in order to survive.
Because a static rulebook is brittle. If reality changes, the organism dies unless it updates its model.
Precisely. And to update the model, we have to navigate a really profound concept from the philosopher Charles Sanders Peirce. He identified something called the semiotic gap.
A semiotic gap. Okay, what is that?
It is the vast distance between declared meaning and enacted meaning.
Oh, I love this distinction. Think about getting your driver's license.
Okay.
The driver's manual you study to pass the written test, that is the declared meaning. It gives you the formal rules, speed limits, right of way, how many feet to signal before a turn.
Right, the map.
But enacted meaning is what happens when you are actually trying to merge onto a crowded highway in the pouring rain.
Yeah, totally different experience.
You aren't reciting the manual in that moment. You are reading the body language of the car next to you, judging speed through instinct, and making these localized, split-second judgments.
The declared meaning is the map, but the enacted meaning is the territory itself. The formal contracts and SLAs we just added to the platform in Phase 3 are pure declared meaning.
But fixing a novel, unprecedented hydraulic fault on an SP2800 planter that requires enacted meaning.
Yes, it requires the unspoken understandings between a dealer and a customer. It requires the messy, handwritten field notes of a senior technician who relies on an intuition that never made it into an official manual.
So declared meaning is what we said we would do, and enacted meaning is the hard-won wisdom of how we actually survive and get things done out in the dirt.
Exactly.
But how on earth does Feldmann get that messy human lived experience into a digital machine? Like, how do you encode instinct?
They initiate Phase 4. They decide to ingest what the research calls the dark corpus.
A dark corpus.
Yeah.
Sounds ominous.
It's just the sediment of enacted meaning. They gather 522 unstructured, handwritten work orders, 100-ton rambling call logs, and over 300 specific IoT anomaly records.
All those messy human notes.
Yes. And instead of trying to force that chaos into a neat, rigid spreadsheet, they utilize a small language model. Specifically, they use Apple MLX.
And what's really crucial here is where that model is running. It is running directly on the local silicon of the device Ranjit is holding in his hands.
Exactly. The computing is happening entirely on the edge. Because remember, Ranjit has no internet connection out in that field.
Right, he can't ping a massive server farm in California to process this data. The intelligence has to be localized.
And using Apple MLX allows the device to process that dark corpus locally without latency and without needing a cloud connection. The platform recalibrates.
It merges the formal rules with the accumulated human experience.
It elevates one more time, moving from a collaborator to a navigator. And the narrative effectiveness score we talked about earlier. Yeah, it surges from 35% to a massive positive 62%.
Wow. So for Ranjit, standing in the heat in Pune, the data silence completely shatters.
Completely. Because the system can now read the sediment of enacted meaning, it drops the final critical answers right onto his screen.
It provides a diagnostic synthesis. It tells him, based on the unstructured notes of veteran technicians from 3 years ago, to check the pressure sensor first.
And if that sensor is nominal, it advises him to run a firmware version check.
Plus, it calculates an estimated resolution time of under 40 minutes. He gets all of that actionable insight in 90 seconds.
And not because the AI performed some kind of unknowable magic trick, but because the leadership at Feldmann made a conscious choice to equip the platform with the accumulated messy experience of the firm's own people.
We aren't just talking about building a better search engine here. We're talking about capturing the accumulated wisdom of the human beings walking around the company.
It's incredible.
But, that really makes me wonder, how much of that human magic can a machine actually hold?
What do you mean?
Like, can we just keep feeding it call logs and field notes until that narrative effectiveness score hits 100%? Will it eventually know everything?
That is perhaps the most crucial philosophical realization in this entire analysis. The short answer is no. The platform cannot hold all of it.
It can.
Not even close. And believing that you can get that score to 100% isn't just mathematically impossible. It is a dangerous, destructive delusion for any leadership team to hold.
So if the score topped out at 62%, that leaves a 38% gap. The sources call this the honest limit, right? And it exists in a space they define as the red band.
Yes, the red band. The dark corpus we just talked about, the field notes, the call logs, that is just the sediment of human experience. It is the trace left behind after the action is already over.
Okay.
But the red band is the by-use exhaust that evaporates in the very moment of its making.
Oh, I see. It's the moments that never get written down because they literally can't be written down.
Yeah.
It's the subtle, unspoken negotiation between two people in a hallway that prevents a massive supply chain disaster. Or, it's the silent judgment a technician uses when they hear a faint rattle in an engine and instinctually know a workaround is safe, even though the manual advises against it.
That meaning is alive, it is constantly in motion, and it disperses the second the event happens. No data architecture, no matter how advanced the local language model is, can reach those moments.
Because you cannot digitize an intuition that someone didn't even realize they had.
Precisely, which means that 38% gap is not a technical failure. It isn't a bug in the system that we need to, quote-unquote, fix with more AI or more surveillance cameras in the hallways or more aggressive data engineering.
It is the constitutive condition of any model of a living organization. The ultimate goal here is not total machine control.
Right. It isn't digitizing every single breath the company takes.
The goal is organizational self-awareness. A trustworthy, resilient enterprise is one that honestly names its own limits. It recognizes that 38% gap as a sacred, unautomatable space where human lived experience actually resides.
The firm that knows the exact shape of its own ignorance is infinitely more resilient than the firm whose pristine, glowing dashboards suggest they have perfectly captured reality.
Because at the end of the day, the platform gave Ranjit the rules and it gave him the historical sediment, but Ranjit is still the one standing in the field.
He is the one who has to actually put his hands on the metal of that SP2800 planter.
He has to read the physical environment, manage the frustrated customer breathing down his neck, and enact the repair. The platform is a brilliant navigator, but Ranjit is still the driver.
The system can hold the sediment, but it cannot hold the living thing itself. These platforms aren't meant to replace the human element. They are meant to map the boundary of where the human element becomes entirely irreplaceable.
Which leaves you with a thought I really want you to mull over as you navigate your own work this week. We spend so much time worrying about whether AI is going to map and automate our current skills.
We do, constantly.
But if the machine is taking over the sediment, the rules, the historical logs, the repeatable tasks, what does that actually do to the red band? As the machine gets smarter, does our intuition shrink, or does it simply move up the ladder?
Will you find yourself relying on your human judgment to solve entirely new, vastly more complex problems that the machine can't even perceive yet?
I think the more the machine learns the sediment, the more vital your unrecorded, fleeting moments of intuition become.
I couldn't agree more.
The field is never truly quiet, but we can learn to see more clearly within it.